Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, August 6, 2026. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, July 30th, 2026, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, July 30, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 8. The draft order to reopen notice and request for comment in docket 5 AE 255 associated with agenda item 9, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 10, accepting the statement of scope for submission to the governor's office, and directing commission staff to prepare and transmit the necessary documents to the governor's office. If accepted, commission staff is directed to prepare and submit the necessary documents to the Legislative Reference Bureau.
I move we approve the notice of investigation associated with agenda item 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 3 through 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 5 AE 255, I move we approve the proposed notice and request for comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 1 AC 263, I move we accept the statement of scope and open the docket.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to the first discussion item for today. We have 5 of them. Our first item is agenda item number 11, docket 5 FE 104. This is the quadrennial planning process for Commissioner Nieto will be leading this discussion as the delegated commissioner on this issue, and I will turn it over to her now. Thank you, Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you, Chair Strand. So the Focus on Energy Evaluation Working Group, or EWG, has recommended we update focus avoided costs before the next quadrennium. The EWG also recommends we adopt a more responsive process for updating avoided cost values in the future. Before getting into the specific alternatives before us today, I'll just give a little bit of background on this matter in particular. I think it's helpful to place this discussion in the broader context of where we are right now in the quadrennium. We are in the last year of Quad 4, and we are in planning for the next quadrennium, Quad 5, which starts in 2027. As part of the Quad 5 planning process, we put considerate efforts forth to modernize the overall framework that will be used to evaluate the program going forward, which is called the Wisconsin Test. At the heart of the Wisconsin Test, same as the modified TRC test framework we have in place in this current quad, are the avoided utility costs. So that's avoided electric energy, electric capacity, transmission and distribution, and natural gas costs. As shown in Table 1 in our memo, these avoided utility costs make up the majority of the measurable benefits produced by the program. They represent the value created when energy efficiency and renewable energy investments reduce the need for utilities to purchase energy, build additional generation, or make other system investments. These Table 1 avoided costs are the bread and butter of Focus on Energy's benefit calculations. Importantly, the Commission has previously established the methodology to calculate each one of these values. None of the data sources or methodologies to calculate these avoided costs are being reconsidered here today in this proposal. Over several quadrennial planning cycles, the Commission has carefully developed and approved the methodologies and data sources used to calculate each of these avoided costs. Those methodologies have been vetted through the EWG, reviewed by Commission staff, and adopted through Commission orders. If in the future the Commission believes a methodology itself should change, that would come before us as a separate policy decision, just as it always has. Similarly, as my colleagues will recall, we just recently adopted a new methodology for calculating avoided emissions benefits as part of the Quad 5 cost effectiveness framework. That methodology is now established, although the specific emissions values will be addressed through a future Commission decision as additional market information becomes available. Again, today's discussion is not about changing those methodologies. A few Important notes here, the EWG is a commission-appointed technical advisory body made up of commission staff, the evaluator, a utility, the program administrator, and an independent industry expert. The current process is that the EWG reviews these bread and butter costs every year, but only actually updates the values once every 4 years at the beginning of the quad. The cost of energy, capacity, transmission, distribution, and natural gas all fluctuate during a 4-year period. These costs are changing even more rapidly today than they used to. EWG previously updated costs every quadrennium and more frequently at EWG's discretion. Then in Quad 3, EWG made the annual review recommendation together with the option to request commission approval to update more frequently than once per quad. The markets and costs were more steady back then, and we did take up that recommendation. Now EWG is recommending more frequent updates once every 2 years and is recommending discretion to update more than that as cost conditions may require. So this year, as one would expect based on the energy markets and the economy, the EWG's annual review of the avoided costs found increases across every single cost category. The group concluded that the values calculated 3 years ago are no longer fully aligned with current market realities and recommended updating them for the 2026 program year. The purpose of the avoided cost figures in the evaluation is to ultimately, at the end of a year and at the end of a quad, understand and communicate how much value the program provided that year. It's our responsibility to ensure our evaluation reasonably reflects the best available information. If market conditions have changed in a meaningful and sustained way, then our evaluation framework should recognize those changes. Otherwise, we're knowingly relying on outdated numbers that do not accurately communicate actual focused costs and savings. I will note this is not like our rate-making proceedings where there is an intentional incentive mechanism underpinning lag. There's no benefit or penalty that accrues to the program administrator or the utilities, and obviously not to the EWG, depending on whether updates are more frequent or less frequent or show more or fewer costs. The program administrator's contractual incentives are tied to actual MMBTU savings and not to these avoided costs, which are intended only to accurately understand the program's costs and savings in our state. However, on the other hand, waiting too long to update avoided costs does delay sending the appropriate cost-effectiveness signal to the program administrator, therefore delaying its ability to effectively adapt program design to those changing market conditions that are likely to be somewhat sustained. Our memo reminds us why these ongoing annual reviews were established. In previous quadrennial transitions, significant changes in avoided costs produce abrupt changes in reported program cost effectiveness, even though program performance itself changed very little. The annual review process was intended to identify those situations and ensure the commission could respond when market conditions materially changed, like they have now. For those reasons, I support alternative 1 on the first question and believe the commission should adopt the updated 2025 avoided costs for use in the 2026 evaluation. Doing so ensures that the program's measured benefits are based on the most current information available rather than values established several years ago. Turning to the second question, I also support alternative 1, but I'm open to alternative 2 as well. As I stated, the energy industry is evolving more rapidly today than it has in many years. Changes in wholesale markets, generation resources, transmission investments, fuel prices, and large load growth can all influence avoided costs over a relatively short period of time. A process that updates these values only once every 4 years risks allowing the evaluation framework to drift away from market realities. I think establishing a predictable schedule of updates twice during each quad strikes the right balance. It provides consistency and transparency for stakeholders while ensuring that our evaluation remains reasonably current. Just like in our current once per quad process, we would become notified of the updated values by commission staff who would notify the delegated commissioner and through the publicly available evaluation report. I would support allowing the EWG to update the avoided costs outside of that schedule when appropriate, using the methodologies and data sources that the commission has already approved. Importantly, this authority is limited. The EWG would not be creating new methodologies or changing commission policy. Rather, it would be applying commission-approved methods using updated data when market conditions warrant. That allows the program to remain responsive without requiring the commission to revisit routine technical updates every time the underlying data changes. That said, the only concern I'd have with alternative one is transparency. So if the EWG doesn't update outside of the prescribed schedule, we would know about it through staff notifying us, and the public would be notified through the evaluation report under alternative one. But under alternative two, while it's less responsive to changing costs, it does balance responsiveness with greater transparency by directly bringing the matter to the commission if there is an outside of schedule update. And that would be through a memo like the one we have here today. So perhaps slightly in favor of alt two here for that second choice. And with that, I will turn it over to Chairperson Strand, and I'll be interested in hearing my colleagues' thoughts on these decision points. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto. I was also at Alt 1 for the first decision item regarding adopting the 2025 avoided costs. For the second decision item, I was firmly at alternative 2. I thought that alternative represented an appropriate middle ground approach, not only between Alts 3 and 1, but also in consideration of the value of more frequent updates as developed and established in the memo. And to your point, I also think that alternative 2 is favorable because it maintains clear commission oversight and also that transparency that comes along with it. So for those reasons, I was most comfortable with alternative 2. I think alternative 1 goes a little bit further than I'm comfortable with at this point, but also, again, alternative 3, status quo. I think they've proven that not the best methodology right now. So those are the reasons I was where I was, but I appreciate you leading our discussion and explaining the justification.
Thanks, Chair Strand. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you both. I'm in a similar place to Chair Strand. For decision 1, I was at Alt 1. Definitely need to update the 2025 avoided costs. For decision 2, I was also at alternative 2, and a couple reasons for why I think not updating every single year if possible is important is that the changes happen in both directions. And so I do understand the point on it, having the most accurate information helps inform program planning and things like that, but we really only do that every 4 years, and we don't want to be looking at the latest signal if it's going to end up changing direction. So I think having sort of longer term updates is healthy. And I do appreciate the point you raised on the transparency piece. I think we only interact with the program so often, and getting that information in front of the commission has value in, shaping our views going into bigger decision items. So I do think having that sort of structured transparency is a good touch point, and we should keep that in place. And I think Alt 2 does that nicely. So for those reasons, I was at 2 for decision 2.
Great. Thanks to you both for those good points. So that puts us all at Alt 1 on the first question and Alt 2 on the second question. Are we ready for a motion? In docket 5 FE 104, I move we direct the Division of Digital Access, Consumer, and Environmental Affairs to draft an order consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to our next agenda item, which is number 12, docket 6630 TH 102, the application of Wisconsin Electric Power Company for approval to remove pilot status of its steam economic development rate tariff. Commissioner Nieto is also leading our discussion of this one, so I will turn it over to her now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strand. This one has a little bit of a quicker background than some of the complexities of focus evaluation. So in 2016, the Commission approved WEPCO's Steam Economic Development Rate, or AG3 tariff, as a pilot program. The purpose of the pilot was to encourage new customers to connect to Milwaukee's downtown steam system, make better use of available steam capacity at the Valley Power Plant, and spread the system's fixed costs over a larger customer base. As part of the pilot, customers could enroll for a period of 5 years, after which the Commission would have the opportunity to evaluate whether the program should continue. The 5-year enrollment period expired at the end of 2023. At that time, the company did not have any significant new customer interest, so it did not seek to make the program permanent. The company has now returned to the commission because it has identified new customers interested in taking service under the tariff. Importantly, the applicant is not proposing to change the design of the program or the rate itself. The only requested change is to remove the sentence in the tariff that gives it pilot designation by eliminating the 5-year enrollment limitation, allowing eligible new customers to continue enrolling into the future. The existing participation cap of annual steam usage would remain unchanged, and current participation remains well below that level. Staff's analysis found no concerns, and the existing participation cap continues to provide protection against unforeseen or unintended consequences, and the rate would continue to require the but-for affidavits demonstrating the need for the rate. As a result, the question before the commission is whether it is reasonable to remove the 5-year enrollment period and approve the STEAM economic development rate as a permanent tariff rather than continuing it as a pilot. I'm at Alt 1. I would approve the requested changes and make the program permanent. We were provided with evidence that this pilot is working. It has been in place for a long time, and that it continues to be necessary for the system. And then we have a question about reporting requirements that staff proposed. On those reporting requirements, I am at Alt 3. I agreed with WEPCO's comments that we don't necessarily need to require the reporting. And it's not because I don't think the information is useful or needed. I appreciate staff teeing those up for us, and I think they were spot on in the items that they listed. It's just that I think these are things that staff could easily ask for in a rate case proceeding, and I would even suggest could just be embedded right in as the IDRs, those initial data requests in a rate case proceeding, and automated. And I think that would be much more streamlined and efficient for everyone than maintaining this separate docket into perpetuity with these reporting requirements. So for that reason, I'm at Alt 1 to make the program permanent, and then Alt 3 to not require the reporting. Chair Strand?
Thank you. I am in the exact same places for the exact same reason. So for decision item 1 regarding the changes to the tariff as filed, I'm at Alt 1 to make it permanent, proof that we don't just pile it into forever. And then for the second decision item regarding reporting requirements, exactly what you said, I'm at alternative 3. I don't think they're necessary for approval of the changes here. And like you said, I think our staff rightfully retains the opportunity to gather that type of information in a future proceeding, should it decide that that information would benefit the record. So because they're not precluded from doing that, I don't think it's necessary to require them here. So Alt 3 for the second decision item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
For decision 1, I was also at alternative 1 to approve the changes to make permanent. Originally for the reporting, I was at Alt 1. Happy to join at Alt 3. I agree that the reporting requirements might not be as necessary as they once were. So I'm good with our ability to get that information through the rate case proceeding. So I will join you both at Alt 3 for decision 2.
Thank you. All right, in docket 6630 TH 102, I move we approve Wisconsin Electric Power Company's request to remove pilot status of its STEAM economic development rate tariff, consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our third agenda item for discussion today is number 13, docket 9713 FG 2026, the Wisconsin Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program. Commissioner Nieto is also leading a discussion on this one, so for the trifecta, I will turn this over to her now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this is the official kickoff of round 2 of the Grid Resilience Grant Program. The Commission's Office of Energy Innovation, or OEI, serves as Wisconsin's state energy office and administers a number of state and federally funded energy programs, including the Wisconsin Grid Resilience Program. The program was established through the IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which created a 5-year formula grant program administered by the U.S. Department of Energy to help states improve the reliability and resilience of the electric grid, particularly in response to extreme weather and other disruptive events. As Wisconsin's designated state energy office, OEI applied for and received the state's formula allocations for the first 3 years of the program. Before applying for the initial funding, Commission staff conducted the required public hearing and public comment process and submitted Wisconsin's Grid Resilience Program narrative to the US DOE in 2023. That narrative outlined the proposed framework for administering the program and indicated that the Commission would approve the detailed program design and eligibility criteria. The DOE subsequently awarded Wisconsin approximately $10.2 million for the program's first 2 years, followed by an additional $5.6 million for year 3. Wisconsin has not yet received notification of its allocations for years 4 and 5. In September 2023, the Commission approved the design for the inaugural grant round, and that first round made approximately $9.7 million available to eligible applicants, with 75% of the funding reserved for small utilities and all eligible applicant and project types authorized under the federal law. Following the application process, the Commission awarded approximately $8.5 million to 19 projects in June of 2024. Those projects are well underway and will shortly realize their benefits to the electrical grid. Since those awards were made, one recipient declined its award and several projects came in under budget, leaving approximately $1.89 million in uncommitted round 1 funding. So the item before the Commission is how to structure the next round of the program and how to distribute the remaining round 1. We included all of the subrecipient types allowed under federal law, but we did set aside 75% of the funding for small utilities. We also allowed all eligible activity types, but we made some of those types priorities for funding. As I indicated, the first round of grants were successful, and I would generally scope round 2 similarly with only some minor tweaks. I'll note I appreciated the comments from Eau Claire Energy Cooperative and the Wisconsin Electric Cooperative Association, and also appreciated staff's great work in preparing this round for us. The first question before us is which types of entities should be eligible to apply. I'm at Alt 1 for this, which would continue our approach that we used in round 1 and allow all applicant types under the federal law. And then the next question before us is which types of projects should be eligible for funding under this grant round. I support Alt 1, Sub-Alt A, which continues the approach we adopted in the first round. Under this approach, all activity types that are eligible would remain eligible to apply, but we would continue to identify priorities for funding. The minor tweaks that I would make is just which priorities we selected based on lessons learned since last time. So basically what I would do is I would add priorities to fire-resistant technologies and fire prevention systems, and I would add priority to undergrounding of electrical equipment. And then I would deprioritize use or construction of distributed energy resources for enhancing system adaptive capacity. So I would deprioritize the DER item because in round 1, we simply received no applications for this activity, and it's likely due to the type of feasibility analysis that goes into those projects, which can be costly and time-consuming, as well as other challenges. And then I would newly prioritize the other 2 items. Number 1, because risk from wildfire in Wisconsin is unfortunately increasing, and it is becoming a reality in our state now as our climate rapidly changes. Fire-resistant technologies and undergrounding are actually 2 ways utilities can reduce the risk to facilities causing fire or being impacted by fire. So those are the changes I would make to our priorities. And then finally, we have a decision to make about how to establish the budget for this round. Staff developed a couple of options for us to consider. Under Alternative 1, we would establish the $7.2 million budget based solely on the funds currently available from years 1 to 3. And then under an Alternative 2, we would also establish the $7.2 million budget, but we could make additional conditional awards to any additional meritorious projects if funding from years 4 and 5 becomes available, or if additional underspend comes in from our current years. And we could make those awards and enter into those agreements if and when that happens, and if and when it's opportune. So under that last decision point, I was at Alt 2, and then Sub-Alt B, which would approve the use of budget for conditional awards if additional funds are made available by December 31, 2029. And I chose that option just because it gives the maximum flexibility within to create kind of that waiting list or conditional award list, and gives us still that head start to get folks going on their grant projects early. One thing I will note is these projects take longer than our other types of grant projects to get through the system, because they do all have to go through DOE for approval after we approve them, and that's why we're looking for a little bit of extra runway here, possibly under the Alt 2. So, all that said, I'm going to turn it over, one more decision point, I apologize. The final decision point here is on the small utility threshold. I would again continue what we did last time and allocate 75% to small utilities. And that gets us through our decision points, and I'll turn it over to Chair Strand for hers.
Thank you for the helpful program discussion and the insights into your positions. I am largely in the same place, so I'll just make a couple general comments because I do really like this program. I think it provides an excellent opportunity to enhance the resiliency of the electric grid in Wisconsin in the faces of extreme weather, wildfire, and other natural disasters. And similar to what you said, if we are carrying some of the round one scoping and prioritization items through to round two, I think we are also making sure that those funds are available, are accessible to the utilities that actually need it the most, or the eligible applicants that need it the most. I also will just say that given the current administration and the things that have happened to a lot of IIJA-funded programs in the last couple of years, that it's somewhat of a miracle that this funding is still available and that we have flexibility in crafting what we want round two to look like. So because of that, I felt on the first question about eligible applicants, I was where you were, Alt 1, to allow all the eligible applicants, allow all eligible applicants to apply. So Alt 1 for decision 1. For the second decision item, I was at Alt 1, which would be to allow all of the eligible activity types in round 2. I did not initially include the Sub-Alt A about establishing a list of priority eligible activities, only because I felt that at this point, we didn't need to do anything else to kind of further limit or overly prescribe what access would look like and what we wanted project applications to prioritize. We're not in this like use it or risk losing it scenario yet, but I'm good with being kind of broad and bold at this point. However, I think the reasons you gave for your Sub-Alt A and the modifications that you made to what we did in round 1 versus what you are seeking in round 2 make a lot of sense. So that's not a hill I'm going to die on at all. I will very quickly walk through the other talking points. I think given the success of round 1, I'm very supportive of establishing the round 2 budget of $7.2 million. And in addition, I'm also very comfortable with expanding those opportunities to allow offerings of conditional awards to meritorious projects, which would be Alt 2, and also very supportive of Sub-Alt B under Alt 2, which would approve the use of the budget for conditional awards if additional funds are made available by December 31st of 2029. I thought that it was really important to provide the maximum time and administrative flexibility while still allowing for US DOE to review the project and that 2-year kind of subrecipient performance period within the bounds of our prime contract date of April 30th of 2032. Again, I think the staff did a great job of providing some flexible options to us that still were mindful of those deadlines and what that review process entails with the federal DOE. So for that reason, I was, again, in the same position you were at Alternative 2, Sub-Alt B for Decision 3. And then for Decision Item 4, the small utility threshold budget, I was also at Alt 1, which would mirror what we did in Round 1 and allocate 75% of the budget to small utilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Strand. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you both. I am in a similar place. For decision 1, I was at Alt 1, allow all eligible applicant types. For decision 2, I was very similarly aligned with Commissioner Nieto. I really thought it would be important to emphasize the fire-resistant technologies and fire prevention. Appreciate the deprioritization. I had not thought about that, but did observe the same thing. So I think that makes sense as you recommended. And then we did see some undergrounding proposals last time, I believe, even without it being prioritized. So I do think it makes sense to prioritize it. So I'm fine with that. So I'm happy to join for decision 2 at Alt 1 sub A as you had laid it out in your positions. And then for the budget, I was in the same place, maximum flexibility, maximum amount of budget. I do think the points that Chair Strand raised about the process about going to DOE and all of that and the uncertainty there, we should give ourselves as much of the headroom as we could possibly take. So I think that is wise. And yeah, 75% maintaining the small utility breakdown clearly worked last time, and I think we should maintain it. So same spot for me.
I spared you guys of all the proverbial sayings that I had included for my reasoning on Alt 2.
Oh,
So
appreciate that.
So you're welcome in advance.
And Chair Strand, I also heard you say that you're good with the Alt 1 sub Alt A on the second.
Yes,
and-
definitely. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I think we're all in alignment. And in docket 9713 FG 2026, I move we approve the Grid Resilience Program Round 2 design and budget consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are going to take a short break before we take up agenda item number 14. We will need a motion to do that, so we'll do that in a second. It is 11:06. We're going to take approximately 45-minute break, which means we would be back here right around 11:50. Can I have a motion for a break, please?
I move we break until around 11:50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we are back for our open meeting. Our next agenda item where we left off is number 14, docket 137, CE 221. This is the application of American Transmission Company for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct and operate the Ozaukee County Distribution Interconnection Project. This docket is before the commission today because of a highly unusual situation occurring, which has culminated in a motion compelling the commission to consider whether the December 15th, 2025 completeness determination should be revoked and rescinded. First, I want to be abundantly clear that the decision before us today is not about the merits of the project and whether or not the commission should grant a CPCN for the proposed project. Instead, at this time, this application presents a unique circumstance whereby the nature, volume, and filing pattern of documents and project revisions from the applicant has unusually complicated the proceeding, and therefore this commission must decide what, if anything, should be done about the current state of the proceedings. I will say that there are not a lot of options available to the commission in attempting to address and/or remedy the issues with the application, especially due to the rigidity of the statutory timeline and statutory requirements that are applicable to CPCN decisions. From my vantage point, the options before us right now are do nothing or revoke the completeness determination. Those are the only options available, and that is why we are here today. This is not a decision that I take lightly. Both options are beset with risks that threaten various entities, including but not limited to the commission, our staff, our processes, the project itself, the applicant, intervening and participating parties, the general public, workers, and many more. I will start by saying that our legal authority to revoke completeness will not be the focus of my comments because the commission has historically presumed the authority to reconsider completeness in the right circumstances. The more relevant and important question here is whether this is such an occasion. In terms of background, the procedural facts are undisputed, and those at all familiar with this proceeding up to this point is aware of what has occurred. And I'm not going to bog down our discussion today with a rehash of those events because that also is not what's at issue here. What is at issue is the fundamental consideration that we had to analyze and contemplate when approaching the decision. Due to project changes initiated by the applicant, is the application today substantially different than the application previously deemed complete? This is an important question because if yes, the impact of these substantial changes is that parties, commission staff, and members of the public would not have sufficient clear information nor time to conduct their review within the strict statutory deadline and that they are charged with. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I am not saying that applications are static and that no changes can be made post-completeness determination, nor am I saying that additional information is not routinely developed through the course of a proceeding. The commission has historically allowed some changes to applications post-completeness. Again, we are instead attempting to ascertain if the changes here are significant enough in volume and magnitude that completeness should be revoked. Does this docket rise to that? There is a lot of information in the record to help inform today's decision, and again, rehashing all of that is unnecessary. So instead, I will focus on some specifics that I considered in reaching a decision to help ascertain the substantiality of changes. The Commission's administrative law judge, who was granted the authority to regulate the course of the proceeding, raised serious concerns about the missing and changing information as the proceeding got closer to key docket milestones. Specifically, in a July 1st order, the Commission's ALJ stated it has come to the attention of this tribunal that the nature, volume, and filing pattern of certain applicant documents have unreasonably complicated the identification of the current application in this proceeding. The ALJ also observed the volume of application documents filed and data request responses as representing, quote, a plethora of changes, modifications, and updates to an application that was previously represented by the applicant to the Commission as complete. Following the Commission's December 2025 completeness determination, the applicant filed or refiled an additional 564 different application documents. Despite the May 1st deadline for direct testimony, the applicant filed supplemental direct testimony for 4 witnesses on June 18th, and additional supplemental direct testimony on June 13th. Late filings are not new. However, these changes included route modifications, new temporary bypass lines needed for construction, changes to the scope of the project, new EMF study results, and revised cost and present value of revenue requirement estimates. In an effort to understand the project, stay abreast of the applicant's changes, and perform their necessary and required analysis, Commission staff asked a total of 483 data request questions across 16 rounds of requests. Many of these questions were required to reconcile conflicting information or errors in the application materials, or were an attempt to understand unexplained changes in refiled documents. Not all of those questions have been answered. The draft environmental impact statement was issued and comments were open in April 2026. This meant that any changes made to the project related to the impacts to the environment after that date were not included in the draft EIS, denying the public an opportunity to weigh in on those changes. And finally, staff finalized the environmental impact statement on July 17th, yet changes are still being made to those application materials. Given the timing in the proceeding, those changes raise serious questions about whether or not the project can comply with Wisconsin Environmental Policy Act, WEPA, and Wisconsin Administrative Code related compliance. I am now going to briefly discuss the significant impacts of those substantial changes and how the impacts themselves helped inform my position. It's clear that the project application has undergone significant and substantive changes since its initial filing, the issuance of the completeness determination in December of 2025, and throughout this proceeding to date. Those changes affect staff, parties, the public, and ultimately commissioners. Project clarity is necessary for Commission staff to complete its review of the application and comply with statutory requirements, especially WEPA and environmental impacts. It is well understood that the Commission appropriately requires a complete and accurate application and record in order to carry out its statutory and administrative rule-based responsibilities. Staff's role in discovery and presentation of information pertinent to the docket, and Commissioners' statutorily bound responsibilities to issue decisions on a variety of dockets, including approving or rejecting a CPCN application. These determinations must be based solely on the evidence in the record, further highlighting the importance of developing a complete, clear, and accurate record. At this point, based on the record before me, the magnitude and volume of changes to the application post-completeness have resulted in what I am calling a moving target application, and created a situation where our staff cannot uphold their responsibilities, and this has created an impediment to their preparation of offered evidence. In addition, and equally troublesome, the magnitude and volume of changes have created a barrier to parties and the public's participation in this proceeding. The impacts of this on commissioners is also significant and important. In reviewing a CPCN for a transmission project, there are approximately 11 fundamental issues that often include numerous sub-issues commissioners must review, analyze, and take a position on in determining whether to grant a CPCN. Of these 11, at least 5 or 6 would be significantly impacted by numerous substantial changes to the project application post-completeness. These include determining compliance with statutory criteria in Wisconsin Statute Section 196.49 sub 3 sub B, determining if a project is in the public interest pursuant to Section 196.491 sub 3 sub D sub 3, considering a number of factors such as alternative locations or routes, individual hardships, engineering, economic, safety, reliability, and environmental factors. The third significant impact would be on the Commission's decision on authorized route. The fourth is the Commission's decision on the estimated cost of the project. And fifth and sixth are issues related to environmental impacts such as project-specific conditions, WEPA compliance, and undue adverse impacts on environmental values. Notwithstanding the impacts just discussed to commission staff, parties, and the public, a murky record would undoubtedly impact a commissioner's ability to arrive at affirmative decisions on any of these fundamental issues. Again, that leaves us in a tough spot. We have incredibly limited options, and revoking the completeness decision at least provides, or could provide, a reasonable reset of the project. Further, and also notable, given the strict statutory timelines governing CPCN proceedings, the revocation is likely necessary in order to halt the current collision course this application is on. While I am not downplaying the impacts revocation would have, this application is clearly underwater, nearly underwater, and this action, revoking the completeness determination, is akin to tossing it a life preserver. For those opposed to the transmission project as a whole, I do want and need to be perfectly clear. Revocation should not be misconstrued as a rejection of this project. In light of all of these things, and before I turn it over to my colleagues for their comments, I will first set forth what I propose for action and then give some very brief closing thoughts. I propose that we revoke the completeness determination and have an affirmative finding that what has been presented to date is incomplete. I would also propose that this determination constitutes final action in this specific docket, and the commission would close this specific docket, again, 137 CE 221. If the applicant decides to file a subsequent application seeking a CPCN to construct and operate the Ozaukee County Distribution Interconnection Project, those filings must occur in a new separate docket, and once filed, the commission would have 30 days to determine whether that filing is complete. And finally, as we do in important cases like this, I would ask for a final order to be returned to the full commission for our review and approval. Finally, again, closing thoughts, saying them clearly and loudly. The PSC is not rejecting a CPCN for this project, and this PSC is not opposed or hostile to data centers, construction, generation, transmission, etc. Frankly, our record speaks for itself on that front. We absolutely recognize and appreciate how crucial generation and transmission infrastructure and construction are to the state of Wisconsin and to the region. Again, this is not a decision made lightly. I recognize the impacts this decision will have on construction timelines and in-service dates for the project. This is an unfortunate outcome. Again, we had limited options and our hand was forced. To be clear, there is little to no leeway or flexibility in the governing statutes and rules that the commission must comply with. We have to act within a certain time frame, and we're required to comply with a variety of provisions that are non-negotiable. They're mutually beneficial because they keep things moving through the process, but they also are in place and we don't have the ability to change them. I finally will conclude that, to me, this application represents a cautionary tale of when unrealistic and unreasonable speed-to-power expectations collide with a deliberative regulatory process that is bound by a mix of thorough review and analysis, strict statutory timelines, stringent statutory requirements, various public participation opportunities, and a lack of flexibility. I will now hand it over to my colleagues for them to weigh in on the decision before us, starting with Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you, Chairperson Strand. I appreciate your comments. I thought they were very helpful. I thought they were spot on, and I'll only add a couple things that I think mostly will just underscore what you just said. I think it's important that we recognize the level of interest and scrutiny that this project has generated. I think that interest underscores the importance of transparency in our process, of public trust and public confidence that the Commission's process is impartial, fair, thorough, and consistent. The credibility of our decisions depends not only on the outcome, but also on the integrity of the process that we use to get there. I'd also agree with what the chairperson said and would want to be clear that the commission does not discourage applicants from making changes to projects or engaging with stakeholders. In fact, we've encouraged that. However, I will note that the best outcome is often when applicants work with affected communities and stakeholders early in the process to address concerns and improve projects before they come to the commission. That said, we also recognize that engagement and project refinement can continue throughout the commission's review process. Applicants sometimes continue to work with stakeholders and make adjustments after filing, and that can be a positive part of the regulatory process. But I think to the chair's point, this situation is unusual and is different from prior cases where prior applicants have made adjustments in an orderly manner or have remedied anything that was identified as not having been presented in an orderly manner while maintaining the overall integrity of the original proposal. I just say, again, this is not a statement that applicants should never make changes, nor that projects must come before us in a final and unchangeable form. There needs to be flexibility in the process, but there also has to be some point at which the changes become significant enough that we need to evaluate whether we are still reviewing the same project that was originally proposed or become unruly enough that we need to take a hard look at whether interested groups can know and understand what is being proposed and reviewed by us. Thus, the difficult question arises as to where the line exists that should not be crossed. And I don't think that we are required to precisely define that line in order to know whether it has been crossed in the instant docket. Given the level of concern and interest this project has generated, it is clear that we need to carefully consider whether that line has been crossed in this case, and that's what we're doing here today. And I just want to say, I think overall, I don't appreciate the circumstances of this application putting us in this position. We're in a bad position here today without a lot of choices. But we have to do our jobs, and I think the path that the chair outlined, including, revoking completeness, that not being a rejection of the application, and making that affirmative finding, taking final action, and having the final order returned. I'm open to that path and look forward to continuing the discussion, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you both. Echoing what Commissioner Nieto just said about the not great position that the commission is in with this application that's before us. I think that the integrity of our process and the durability of our decisions are paramount, and that's really how I approached this this discussion and this decision today. The chair's words were that this application is underwater, and with that, comes a lot of expectation of the challenges the do nothing option comes with, and what that means to the ultimate decision if it were to be pursued. And so I certainly agree with my colleagues that it's the totality of the modifications that have been seen in this process that need to be considered when weighing whether or not the application we're reviewing today is the same as the one that was deemed complete in December of 2025. I also agree that we do not need to define that bright line, but certainly the record shows a substantial number of changes and a very significant challenge to this commission meeting its requirements by the statutes for review in a CPCN case. So I believe the approach is the least bad option that the chair has laid out. I can be supportive of that. I think that a new application is really the only way to give the public and interveners, the process that they deserve and that the statute actually contemplates, which is we have a complete application and then we have strict timelines that are feasible only when we have a complete application. So given that it sounds like we are finding that we do not have that today, this seems to be the only option that allows our requirements to play out as stated in the statute. So that's it from me. Happy to discuss further.
Thank you. Good job saying what you said about least bad without swearing, because I almost did the same thing, but with swearing. I appreciate both of your comments. It sounds like we all struggled with the same issues, and again, agree that we have very, very limited options on where to go from here. Unless you all have anything else that you want to add, probably ready for some action. Do you have everything?
I'm all
you
set.
need? Okay.
Ready for a motion? In docket 137, CE 221, I move we revoke the completeness determination, making an affirmative finding that the application is incomplete, and would ask to see that order returned to us, and take action pursuant to our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that ends that discussion, but we now need to go into closed session under Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 1 sub G to discuss litigation matters noted in our agenda with our legal counsel, not related to 137 CE 221, just to be clear. And then we will reconvene our open meeting pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 2. So we are going to go into closed session. In order to do that, we need a motion. And we will come back once we have confirmed with legal counsel about a different matter that was noticed on our open meeting agenda for today.
I move we go into closed session under Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 1 sub G to discuss the litigation matter listed on agenda item 15 of our commission agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are going into closed. Thank you. Thank you, we're adjourned.